Usually when you see fashion ads, usually the big controversy is that, perhaps they used models too thin or too young. It seems that a lot of fashion houses are now, or retailers are now kind of wading into some of the more social issues. One here in Canada, Simon's, which is a very successful department store based out of Quebec, they featured euthanasia in their recent ad. And it featured a woman who actually had just recently been euthanized, Jennifer Hatch, from British Columbia, and was kind of talking about her journey. It was like, I have to say, it was a very beautifully artistic advertisement, but she chose to have herself killed by doctor-assisted suicide, by medical assisted suicide. Is this appropriate for a fashion housing? Is this the right messaging even, Elliot? I'll let you take the first stab at it.
I mean, I definitely don't think it is. I think it is kind of pretty bad that they would try to use this very emotional type of story to try and sell more clothing. That said, as you mentioned, it's a very artistic and it's a sort of a nicely made ad, and I would assume that the person who was involved in that understood why this was being done, and so participated in that in a in an open and willing fashion. But I find it a very odd choice, and I find it, particularly around an issue that is so contentious at the moment and is going through some growing pains at the moment, and it's just a very odd choice. And when I saw that and read the article about it and saw the news about it, I really shook my head and really had to wonder, this was a very poor attempt at trying to stand out in what is becoming, I guess, a crowded clothing market, and I just couldn't understand what they were doing with it, to be honest.
Well, I mean, perhaps they had some foresight, because we're here talking about it on national television, and I've chatted with about half a dozen other people. So, I never paid much attention to that store before, being here in Ontario, but who knows? Brock, what is your take on this ad? Was that poor taste? Apparently, the woman, Jennifer Hatch, she actually wanted to live initially. What is your take on this?
First of all, I think the foolish ad campaign achieved its goal. We're talking about it. But secondly, one of the core problems with assisted suicide in Canada is the court forced Parliament to make a decision. Parliament failed to do this. Now, as Elliot mentioned, it's a growing issue, and it's a growing pool of Canadians that may be eligible for medically assisted suicide. And lack of access to healthcare, lack of access to public services shouldn't be sufficient cause to end a person's life just because they're struggling. There should be supports in society to help people.
Yes, I agree. I mean, she mentioned that it was through a lack of palliative care, a lack of supports and health care. She had a rare syndrome called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, connective tissue disorder. Not very many Canadians know about it, but very painful to live. And, it's sad that, I guess, coming off our last segment when we were talking about healthcare, that our healthcare system wasn't able to meet her needs. And again, taking the euthanasia component aside, it was a beautifully artistic, very visually beautiful ad. Totally, I don't think it hit I don't know how one sells clothes featuring euthanasia. I really don't. Let's talk about another ad that came out. Balenciaga, which is a European fashion house, distastefully, and if we can put up the image, then we will. But they featured children with teddy bears in bondage. Again, one of those what were they thinking kind of things. Elliot, did you catch that ad?
I didn't look through it because I thought it was pretty weird. But again, I think it's accomplishing, particularly with this, at least I kind of understand a little bit more than the Simon's ad. Edge, a fashion house trying to be edgy, trying to stand out. It's a very competitive landscape. We are talking about it on a current affairs program in Canada. So obviously this has done something to kind of get that Balenciaga name out there. Most people probably didn't even know what that brand was. So, and then immediately they retract, they apologize, and they pull back. And so they felt it was probably worth it. This is a brainstorming session gone wrong, or maybe a brainstorming session that's gone very, very right for the brand.
Brock, what is your take?
I think the real problem is once the ad was condemned, leaders in the fashion industry and Hollywood celebrities were really slow to criticize. It took Kim Kardashian days to speak out. It took other fashion houses days to speak out. And as a result, it sort of shows that the whole industry is complicit in sort of pushing the boundaries endlessly, trying to promote itself and sell their product.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned, yes, Hollywood and celebrities were slow to come out. You mentioned Kim Kardashian. Again, they said, we're going to reevaluate our relationship. It wasn't even really a condemnation. I found that shocking. The depiction of children associated in any way, shape, or form with bondage to me is a horrifying as a parent, especially.